Year 4 in the Wes Miller era at Cincinnati, continuing to ascend each year under Wes Miller. 3 straight winning seasons, 2 straight 20-win seasons, and you go 7-11 in the Big 12 last year, but it's a stacked Big 12. They totally held their own and had a top 20 defense, and now you bring back a ton of guys, some interesting additions, and Cincinnati's poised to be right in the thick of things in the Big 12. Christian and Nick here with Scott Springer, who covers Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Scott, thanks for being here with us. Tell us, if last year kind of went as expected as a team, like kind of in the bubble mix, but this is the year where that jump is really expected, right? Where Cincinnati can be like a top 25 team.
Well, yeah, you look at the roster, and the talent level on the roster, and some preseason rankings have them, in the top 25 already. Now, again, you have to go play those games, and the Big 12 is treacherous. But, based on what they did last year and the additions that they had and the fact that they returned 9 guys, not many teams can say that. Most teams are just turning over talent, and Cincinnati has 9 guys back and several starters. So that helps. Every team gets better. But, in this portal era, it's how do you build a culture and all that? And it's easier when you have 9 guys that have been around rather than 9 new guys. It can work both ways. But to me, I think that's the upside of the Bearcats is that Wes has 9 guys back in addition to the talent that he's added through the portal and the guys he's recruited.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the core of 9 guys coming back because he didn't really have to go to the portal and make a splash, but he kind of did it anyways, bringing in Dylan Mitchell over from Texas. I guess there's 2 guys that I'm really excited to watch play this season for Cincinnati, one being the newcomer Dylan Mitchell, seeing how he fits in with everybody. The second one being Dan Skillings, who down the stretch last season looked really good. He averaged 17 points last 8 games of the season. So what can we expect out of Dylan Mitchell and Dan Skillings this season?
Well, hopefully Dylan Mitchell gets a jump shot because I don't think he made any threes last year for Texas. But, when you can run the floor and sky like him, and they do have a new coach on hand, Tim Buckley, and they call him the shot doctor. So hopefully he's able to expand his game there. But, from what I saw of him last year with Texas and having talked to him, and he's a McDonald's All-American and all that for a reason, there's a lot he can add to the team. And then Dan Skillings, I mean, you go back to his freshman year when he's struggling to get playing time, but NBA scouts were coming and they were curious about this freshman with the wingspan that could sky, and he's developed tremendously. I think he would like to be out after this year. We'll see what happens there. He did come back, but yeah, he's certainly somebody to watch, and he's matured as a player. And in the Big 12 tournament, he had a great run there, and he has an outside game now too. He can go outside, and he just got some tremendous moves inside. He's just one of those guys that he'll pull off a move that you just don't see on the floor, almost like a playground move, but he's able to make it look routine.
Skillings reminds me of Terrence Shannon for Illinois last year. Just 6'6", just in transition, just a monster, and just can get downhill. And like you said, whether he's spinning or just using his physicality, like just doing things that are special that jump out. And if he can get from 29% from 3 to like a 34 type of lane with the shot doctor in town and everything now, I think Skillings could be a first team all Big 12 type of guy. And the defensive upside of this team is clear. Based on Wes Miller's identity and being top 20 last year, you've got Aziz back there protecting the rim. Do you expect this defense to take another step forward this year? And who do you think are Dylan Mitchell's a guy that should definitely help that, but who do you think are the other key guys to keeping the defense at a high level?
Well, Aziz definitely changes the game. Even if he doesn't block a shot, he changes shots. And the fact that he's just there and he does some crazy things. And I've seen it as a Bearcat, and then the one year he played against them in the NIT for Utah Valley, and he was pretty tremendous in that game. Hopefully he's developed some more post moves offensively, but defensively, he's somebody that you really need in there. Mitchell can sky, as we talked about. The one Wes has talked about quite a bit is Arrington Page, the transfer from USC, and he really sees him taking a jump, and I've heard some outstanding things about him. And then another one that could have helped, but unfortunately he's probably out for the season. Tyler McKinley with a knee injury, just had a surgery. And he was only a true freshman, but I heard he had a great summer and he could have really helped in rebounding and changing shots. Another 6'9" long armed leaper type guy, and he's got plenty of basketball to play yet. So hopefully he gets over this. And he is a Cincinnati guy, so everyone was really looking forward to seeing him. But they'll have to go without him. They did pick up another guy, and I don't even know him as well to say his name correctly, but Alvin Zealot, I believe it is. But it's my understanding he's not eligible. He's a 6'10" guy that's going to help in practice. I don't know if they can petition for his eligibility. I don't know the foreign rules, but he came from France, and 6'10", and another long arm guy that at the very least can help you in practice, because quite honestly, some of the guys last year in the post just weren't quite cutting it, and that's why they're not there.
Yeah, I liked Ayrton Page. He was a former top 60 recruit before he went over to USC and had flashes at USC. I liked when Cincinnati last year, when they went with that rotation with Bandego and the other big white guy with the Clemson. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Chris,
Victor
yeah,
Larkin?
Victor Larkin. I like when they had that flexibility. Do you think that Wes Miller is going to have that same flexibility this season with Page?
Yeah, I think Wes is insinuated they're probably going to go, 4 wings and a big. So you're going to have guys in and out. So I don't know how that works with Page and Aziz. But Dylan is still 6'8", so he's a wing. Simas Lukosius is 6'8", and he can do a little bit of everything, and he can really. He was clutch down the end of the season with some big time shots. So, and he's a guard type, and then Jizzle's incredible, and Day and whoever they throw. Connor Hickman's another 3-point guy. So I don't want to go through the whole lineup here. I know you're asking me about post players, but I think Page they think is going to make a big jump based on what they've seen. And then Wes had also mentioned back earlier in the summer that I guess at USC Page had mono, and that was quite a setback for him too. So he's recovered from that. So only good things happening with him.
So yeah, Lukosius I think is a key guy here because shooting is the clear weakness of the Cincinnati team. They shot 33% from deep last year, which was 226th in the country, and Lukosius is a guy that can definitely heat up. Let's not forget that Cincinnati finished the season well last year, winning a couple games in the Big 12 tournament, taking Baylor right there in that Baylor game, and then, winning a couple NIT games before losing to eventual runner-up Indiana State. But let's not forget that they could have lost to a kind of trash fire West Virginia team if Lukosius and Day Thomas didn't each hit 7 threes in that game to win 90-85. So I'm looking at Lukosius as a key guy for shooting, but also this backcourt of Jizzle James and Day Thomas. Jizzle James, the guy that a lot of people are expecting that step from, and Day Thomas, the guy like I said, he hit 7 threes in a game, but he's not much of a shooter as well. So can you tell us about the progression of that backcourt pairing and just more about the shot doctor? Because if these guys are real, I mean, it could be huge for Cincinnati.
Well, yeah, that game you mentioned, that was kind of curious because you're looking, it's like, oh, gee whiz, you just beat. I think Cincinnati just played them at 40. Home, and then they had to come to Kansas City and play them. And but West Virginia played really inspired, and somehow Day found a shot that night, and they were going in. And Simas, when he gets hot, you got to feed him the ball. Day just. He missed some of the NIT there. I think he got injured in the first game against San Francisco. So they didn't have him in the final 2 games there, which may have made a difference. But everything I've heard, he's recovered from that, and he's back with him. And he's so fast. I forget what the speed is exactly, but they've timed him, getting down the court with the ball, and he gets it down there like now. And then Jizzle has all that experience, and then in the NIT got to be the starter because it was Day starting and Jizzle coming off the bench. And with Jizzle starting, he was pretty dynamic, and I've always loved his mid-range game. I'm a little older, so I really appreciate a mid-range game because it gets old when you're only going dunk or 3, and if you can hit a 10-foot shot sometimes. He's money. He 10 to 15 feet, and I talked with him and his father about that, and that's something that they worked on. And I think his shot's only going to get better. Sky's the limit for him. He was a big guy to get to come back, So in addition to being excited about all the new guys coming in, I think Cincinnati fans were equally as excited to have Dan Skillings back, Jizzle James back, basically re-recruiting your guys, which is what goes on now.
I guess like Chris had mentioned, my one red flag with Cincinnati this year was probably shooting, because they were last in the 3-point percent category last season in the Big 12 Conference, and 13th in turnover percent too, which was second to last in the Big 12. There's two guys that one I'm really high on that I like, and he's kind of under the radar, but it's Connor Hickman.
Right.
Veteran player, 40% from three last season at Bradley and NBC. He's a good player. He's a leader for that Bradley team. And then CJ Frederick, obviously, was in and out last season, 42% from three, though. But he can be like, he can get hot and be a key guy off the bench. But at the end of the day, you are sacrificing defense, of course, because these aren't big, long wings like they do have in the starting five. So what can we expect from Hickman? Because I know as an older player and a guy who averaged 14 last season at Bradley, he's not coming to Cincinnati to, sit the bench. So how can we see his role really play out this season with Cincinnati?
I think he fits in there in the top 6, for sure 7. He has turned some heads with his shooting already. I did see him, with Bradley when they came and played the Bearcats in the NIT, and he was definitely the guy that you were looking to stop. And then CJ Frederick, like you mentioned, you go back and look at his career. He was lights out some games at Iowa way back when, and he's had some setbacks with his injuries and whatnot. But what he gives you is essentially a coach on the floor, because he's nearly elderly at this point. He's kind of like some of these 6 and 7 year quarterbacks in college football. He's been around. He legit has the year to come back. He's using it. He did get hot some games, but unfortunately for the Big 12 season, he wasn't able to play much. So I think he adds a lot to the bench, to the shooting aspect of it. And those are two guys that can light it up in a hurry. And like you mentioned, that's what they need. And so hopefully, you always wonder, to me, I mean, we all played a little bit. To me, it's always easier being in the game than coming off the bench and then trying to light something up. So that's a unique skill for a guy that can come off the bench and do anything. But we'll see. I wouldn't put it, Hickman certainly has a chance to start. I have no idea who they'll start, but I know he wants to play 8 to 10 guys. So starting in Cincinnati, yeah, you start, but it's who finishes.
Right. And, the more I'm looking into this roster, I'm seeing that there's real depth in a lot of ways you can go, because, guys like Jizzle James and Hickman could be coming off the bench. And those are some pretty good players. The one other guy that will probably factor in here, or I guess there's two that we haven't talked about, Josh Reed and Tyler Betsy. Are either of those guys, what have you been hearing about them? Do you think that they'll factor into the rotation?
Reed has always had a nice shot and could come in and just out of the blue start hitting. And it was, he's shot a decent percentage when he's played. He just hasn't gotten the consistent minutes, but he's a mature guy. I know he's good friends with Dan Skillings, and that helps. And you mentioned, Betsy. I haven't seen a whole lot of Betsy in person yet, just because of the restrictions. And I also cover football. I have seen his tape. I have walked past him. His size is legit. Sometimes kids are advertised at 6'8", and then they get to school and they've shrunk 2 inches. He's legit 6'8". He's got a nice looking 3-point shot. I know I talked to him the day that he committed, and Alabama was in the running and Connecticut was in the running, and they're pretty good schools. So if they wanted him, he's pretty good. So yeah, I think he can make a difference. Wes had said earlier in the year, he thought both freshmen, the two Tylers, Tyler Betsy, Tyler McKinley, would both play. I don't know how much, but yeah, Reed can help him out. There's another native Cincinnatian, Rayvon Griffith, that's there too. And he might have to wait in the wings a little bit, but he's another, 6'6", 6'7", Dan Skillings type size, versatile. So I don't know if he's going to be in the mix or if he's going to have to wait another year. He was a redshirt last year, but he's there too.
Like Chris mentioned earlier when we started the podcast off, Wes Miller's gotten better every single season, based off the Camp Palm ranking and everything. In your opinion, and I have this team circled as a tournament team, would you be pretty surprised if Cincinnati wasn't in the tournament in his fourth season as a head coach of Cincinnati?
If they were not in the tournament, yeah, I'd be surprised. I think this is the year that, I don't know that there's actually pressure on him, but I think most people are expecting a tournament appearance, and it's not been since Mick Cronin's last team in 2019, I believe that was. So yeah, the NIT, it's nice to keep playing, and it's good for the players to keep playing, but it's not the same. And most people, God bless the NIT. Most people can't tell you who won the NIT the year before half the time. And heaven forbid what those other tournaments are all about, because no one even knows who's in those things. But someone's making a buck, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I expect this to be a tournament team as well. Obviously, the Big 12 is, it's the Big 12. It's crazy, and it's getting crazier this year, adding, Arizona and company. But look at the non-conference. They go at Georgia Tech, at Nova. They got Dayton and Xavier too. Those are some solid games.
Oh yeah, yeah.
A lot of Big 12 teams are playing cup.
Well, and Xavier's a team right here in town that's had Cincinnati's number lately, and they're in the Big East, and that hurts a lot of Bearcat fans. I can tell you that those schools are separated by about 4 miles, and that goes on all year long between fans. So they're good, and as you mentioned, Villanova, Georgia Tech, Cincinnati beat Georgia Tech pretty handily last year in Cincinnati, so I'm sure they remember that, and then Dayton. That's a game that's played in downtown Cincinnati, but Dayton Flyers fans, they travel all over the place, and great NCAA basketball fans, and they filled that arena last year and made it tough for UC.
And it's been a while since Xavier and Cincinnati were both tournament teams. It's been since Mick was there, and so this is, for that rivalry, this is going to be quite the game. Last thing I want to leave with here, Scott, is Wes Miller. It took him some time at UNC Greensboro. They were patient with him. He had a losing record his first 5 seasons there, and then it was boom, 25 wins, 27, 29, 23, 21. Almost won a couple tournament games against Florida State and Gonzaga there too. And this feels like the breakout year. And you look at some of the staples of Wes Miller teams. It's offensive rebounding is a big one. This team was 15th last year in offensive rebounding, and I'm pretty sure Nick mentioned this about the turnovers last year. 200th nationally in turnover percentage, but the 2 seasons before they were 21st and 24th. So, the team got better, but in a key metric for his identity, that's something that, they were 17th this last year in UNC Greensboro. Taking care of the basketball, crashing offensive rebound, and protecting the rim are staples of him. And this is his most talented roster. He's got the retention. They've got the schedule. Like, everything's coming together. Like, I think this is absolutely the breakout year for Wes Miller.
Yeah, I think people would be extremely satisfied to be back in the tournament. Certainly Cincinnati has seen their share of first and second round losses there, even, with Mick Cronin, with Bob Huggins. You're used to that, but I mean, you can't win unless you're in. So if you're in, it's a great big deal for everybody that gets in, and you're noticed and you're relevant, and however long you're relevant depends on what you do in March. So. People are going to lose games in December and maybe January, but really the ones that count are in March.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Scott. You're a great guest, and hope you enjoy the rest of football season and basketball season over there in Cincinnati.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.